Hello and thanks for stopping by. This is Trojan for the NES, a Capcom game released in 1986. This was also an arcade game that was released earlier the same year, and I think I played that one maybe once. The fact that these two came out so close together, I kind of assumed they were developed at the same time. The NES version is the one that sticks with me for sure. First off, I think the game has some pretty stylish art, or at least that's the way it looks on the cartridge. I always liked it, but it's also pretty small. I don't know, maybe it's not so awesome blown up. This was one of those games that my brothers and I had in our NES collection, and when you have a small collection like we did, you tend to play the same games a lot, so I was familiar with the game. When I started playing the NES again, this was one of my early purchases. It was easy to find, and it wasn't really an expensive game, or at least not when I bought it. Overall, I think the game is okay, but for a Capcom game, I do wish it was better. It's fine, I guess. I don't know, it feels a little empty at times, maybe repetitive. This is a post-apocalyptic world, and there are, of course, a bunch of villains, and there's you. You're the lone crusader sent to stop them. I think the scenery is what you'd expect for the NES, and, we get some wrecked cars, some destroyed cities in the background. It certainly fits. Trojan is a platformer, and I guess you could sort of describe this one to be like Ghosts and Goblins. But I say that only because I found some references to it online. I suppose I do see the connection. You're running, you're attacking, and you get a sub-screen, and it sort of tells you where you are in the overall progress of the game, but honestly, I think if you're a fan of Ghosts and Goblins, I don't think you'd really consider this one to be in the same league. They're just not executed the same way. You have a sword and a shield, and I guess that's the big thing about this game, having both. You can swipe with your sword, and you can control and block with your shield. The biggest problem here, I think, is the fact that this is the NES, and you only get 2 buttons on the controller. In this instance, 1 button is used for sword, and 1 is used for shield. That really stinks, because it means jump is now used by the up on the directional pad. It's just awful.
Oh, jeez, that's just awful.
Especially considering this is a game where you jump a lot, or at least I do. I'm thinking this game would just be better served if the shield was used, maybe by pressing both the A and B button together. You press A and B, your character freezes in place, and you hold up the shield, and now you can alter the direction using the thumb pad. I just think this would be a better method, that's all. I do like how you have a shield, and you get to control it. You don't just hold it up in front of you. You press the button, hold it in place, and you can use your D-pad to make it move in different angles. This is important because some of the incoming fire is going to be at a different angle, or maybe even coming at you straight down. Being able to adjust your shield to compensate for this, it works. At least in this place it does. There are going to be some times in the game where you really need to mash that sword button, but there are also plenty of places where you need to use that shield. I suppose if you go through the game, you're going to get used to how it progresses, and you'll know where to do what. When I first popped this game in, after not having played it for probably 20 years or so, I managed to get through the first 3 levels the very first time I played. So I do have a basic remembrance of what's at stake here. It is a side-scroller, and you are, of course, always trying to advance. The faster you can get through these levels, obviously, will make the game easier long-term. Enemies are going to keep spawning, and there are a certain amount of enemies that you can actually just run away from. So, seriously, that first level, don't turn around if you can avoid it. Just keep running forward and stab what's in front of you, and jump over those manholes if you can. If you fall into a manhole on the first level, you're going to get to this sort of sub-screen, and I guess it's kind of like a mini-boss, and you have to fight these enemies that are down there. The ones I don't really like are these little jerks that roll up into this ball, kind of like an armadillo, and they race towards you. You have to jump over them, and not being able to use a button to jump, it's awkward. When they unfurl, you strike them, and then rinse and repeat, I guess. Sometimes they throw something at you if you don't hit them in time that you have to dodge. That's another part of this, I suppose. But hopefully you get to hit them enough, and then you have to repeat this cycle until finally you kill them. It's a long time, though. It's like 8 or 10 jumps to make this happen. I don't know, it seems kind of dull for me. I think my other frustrations with the game is that there really isn't that much variety with enemies. Or at least it doesn't feel like it. I know there are 2 or 3 different enemies per level, but it just doesn't feel like it's enough. Some of the bosses at the end of the levels are pretty interesting, but at the same time, sometimes they feel like they're recycled from earlier mini-bosses. There's this crazy-looking jumping guy. He showed up in one of the sewers. I personally think he looks like the character Zartan from G.I. Joe, but he just doesn't have a hood on. I guess that's a really specific reference, but hey, it's what I got. Maybe it's a face paint, but some bosses are a bit more unique. we get these two wrestler-looking guys, and you can smash the first one pretty hard, and then just pay attention to the pattern for the second one. Not too hard, but you will see these guys recycled in a later level. We also get this beefy guy with the club at the end of the third level. He's pretty good for getting me pounded, that's for sure. This is where I ended my first game after picking it up after so long. It definitely took me down a peg. Now when you die, there is a hidden restart if you want to continue. After you get to the game over screen, you hold up and start, and you will continue from the last level. It works, and, it's appreciated because, there's a certain grind to the game. I do think the music is also pretty good with this one. When you beat a stage and the progression map appears, you get this solid little jingle. That's the sound of accomplishment. I like that. I actually remember beating this game way back in the day as well, and I seem to recall the last boss just spamming him, just jumping on top of him, and you don't stop jumping, and smash him with the sword. Just sort of pinned him at the end of the screen and killed him eventually. There's this awesome end image of you holding your sword, and the music playing, and then the world crumbling around you. That's a pretty nice sight to behold for sure. So, it's not a bad game really, it's just, I don't know, it's just not remarkable. I guess maybe I'd feel different if the buttons were changed. Repetitive, okay I guess. I checked out a few videos related to the arcade version of this game, and I have to say, the NES version has some obvious similarities to how the games flow. They're definitely similar. Although the graphics certainly are better for the arcade, you get sort of similar stage designs. Strangely, the map screen between the stages, it's better for the NES, and I really wasn't expecting that. It's just boring looking in the arcade. Here, well, at least we get something. Overall, not bad, just not great. Well, that's all I have today for Trojan for the NES. If you like this type of video, please feel free to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And as always, thank you for stopping by to take a look. Hope to catch you on another video.